It was the operation that shifted the fault lines of Middle Eastern geopolitics. A mission planned in the deep shadows, executed with an audacity that redefined the concept of strategic dominance. From the sun-baked hangars of Israel's Nevatim Air Base to the crowded Situation Room in Washington, D.C., and finally, to the high-altitude void above the Iranian capital, Operation Roaring Lion was more than just a strike. It was a complex symphony of intelligence, technology, and sheer force. In the days and weeks that followed, the global conversation was dominated by headlines, but the noise of the news often drowns out the nuance of strategy. Beyond the damage assessment and the political statements, a deeper, more profound analysis is required to understand what truly happened and why. This video is not about the ethics or the politics. It is a dispassionate, objective military and geopolitical analysis. We will deconstruct Operation Roaring Lion, assessing the objectives, the tactical execution, the technological innovations, and the long-term strategic consequences. We will answer the critical questions. How did a joint force penetrate one of the world's most dense and complex air defense networks? What was the true cost? And what is the new reality of power in the Middle East? Welcome to a strategic analysis of Operation Roaring Lion. While publicly the US and Israeli governments often appeared at odds over the best way to handle Iran's nuclear and regional ambitions, behind the scenes, military and intelligence cooperation was reaching an unprecedented level. Operation Roaring Lion was not an overnight decision. It was the culmination of months, possibly years of detailed joint planning. The challenges were monumental. Tehran is not only geographically distant, requiring multiple complex in-flight refuelings, but it is also one of the most well-defended cities on the planet. Its integrated air defense system, IADS, features a layered network of Russian-made S-300 batteries, the most advanced indigenous Iranian systems like the Bavar-373 and short-range point defenses. This was not a mission Israel could execute alone, at least not without unacceptably high risks. They needed the strategic depth, logistical support, and unique capabilities of the United States. Specifically, they required U.S. electronic warfare expertise and the specific door kicker capability that only advanced U.S. stealth aircraft could provide. The joint planning was a masterclass in operational security. It required a level of data sharing and system integration that had never been seen before. It wasn't just two allies attacking a common enemy. It was a deeply integrated single-strike package that fused the unique strengths of both air forces. The crucial question, of course, is what was the final trigger? The answer, like the operation itself, is complex. It was not a single catastrophic event, but rather the cumulative effect of crossing multiple red lines. Israel and the US had watched as Iran's proxy forces escalated their attacks, from Houthi disruptions in the Red Sea to a steady increase in rocket and drone fire on Israel's northern border. Simultaneously, Western intelligence had growing concerns about the pace and sophistication of Iran's uranium enrichment. The strategic dilemma was this: would a massive preemptive strike trigger the very all-out war that de-escalation was designed to prevent? Or would a lack of action embolden Tehran and its proxies, making a catastrophic conflict inevitable? For the planners of Roaring Lion, the risk of inaction had become greater than the risk of action. A strike was no longer a question of if, but when and how. The road to rhythm was built on a calculated gamble. The joint forces believed that by degrading Iran's primary retaliatory capability, its missile launchers and production facilities, they could create a new, more stable regional security architecture. It was a mission born from the collapse of containment. It was time for the lion to roar. Operation Roaring Lion did not begin with an explosion. It began with an act of invisible, digital, and electronic force. This was Phase 1, the systematic dismantling of Iran's integrated air defense system. A critical, often overlooked element of the joint force was the specialized U.S. contribution to electronic warfare. While Israeli F-35Is possess potent native EW capabilities, the United States provided a critical, next-generation layer. Specialized aircraft operating in concert with cyber assets unleashed a coordinated and relentless electronic attack. This was not a simple jamming signal. It was a sophisticated multi-spectrum assault that exploited specific known vulnerabilities in Iranian radar and communication systems. The goal was to blind the enemy, to disrupt their ability to coordinate, and to create a sanitized corridor through which the main strike force could penetrate undetected. Simultaneously, a complex and highly targeted cyber campaign began. This attack didn't just overload networks, it was designed to subtly alter data, inject false information, and systematically disable the command and control links between air defense batteries. The Iranian S-300 crews were looking at screens that were either filled with static or, worse, filled with false phantom targets. Before a single bomb was dropped, the Iranian IADS was paralyzed. With the defenses blind and the command links broken, Phase 2 could begin, the silent penetration. This was the moment of peak surgical precision. Israeli F-35I Adir fighters, acting as the tip of the spear, began their ingress into Iranian airspace. Their primary targets were the most critical components of Iran's retaliatory power. This included high-value ballistic missile production facilities, known command and control centers, and key storage sites. The F-35s did not engage in chaotic dogfights. Their weapons were released from optimal ranges with GPS and laser guidance ensuring pinpoint accuracy. The initial wave was a silent devastation. Stealthy glide bombs and cruise missiles, designed to have minimal radar cross-sections, were released from their internal bays. They struck their targets with surgical force, destroying them from within. Once the initial stealth penetration had carved open the path, a second, more powerful kinetic storm was unleashed. This involved non-stealthy Israeli F-15Is and F-16Is, and even specialized U.S. assets. This force was no longer concerned with absolute silence. Their objective was complete and total destruction. This was the moment for the heavy hitters, the bunker-busting munitions and massive precision payloads designed to collapse the hardened underground structures where Iran had hidden its most strategic assets. A complex dance of air-to-air refueling, electronic support, and kinetic force was executed with a degree of synchronization that was simply staggering. The final phase was damage assessment. This was not just a case of, did we hit it, but what is the strategic effect? And the effect was profound. The primary objective of Operation Roaring Lion was not the total destruction of its strategic deterrent. The initial BDA, or battle damage assessment, based on sophisticated satellite and electronic intelligence, painted a compelling picture. Over 300 ballistic missile launchers were destroyed. Critical components of Iran's most advanced missile production facilities were reduced to rubble. These weren't just buildings, they were the unique and non-replicable tooling and personnel that represented decades of research and development. The joint force had successfully identified and neutralized the key bottlenecks in Iran's missile program. The consequence was a massive planning gap for Tehran. In one single night, Iran's ability to overwhelm Israel's defense systems with a massive missile barrage had been fundamentally degraded. The window of opportunity for an Iranian retaliation had not just been closed, it had been shattered. It would take months, perhaps years, for Iran to rebuild this specific high-end strategic force. The operation had achieved its core objective, preemption that would force a long-term de-escalation of the missile threat. Furthermore, the strike had a devastating psychological effect. The myth of an invulnerable, deep underground arsenal had been broken. It sent a clear message not only to Tehran but also to its proxy network. Their patron was no longer invulnerable. Operation Roaring Lion had strategically isolated Iran and paralyzed its primary regional weapon. Operation Roaring Lion did more than just destroy hardware. It redefined the very concept of strategic deterrence in the modern age. For decades, deterrence in the Middle East was built on the threat of mutual destruction. A massive all-out war with a proxy network on one side and an Israeli and US retaliation on the other. This model, based on reactive force, had failed. The new model, forged in the fires over Tehran, is one of intelligent preemption. It is based on a new data-driven ability to identify, locate, and neutralize high-value, non-replicable assets before they can be used. This is not about starting a war. It is about strategically degrading the enemy's ability to win a war, thereby making the war itself a non-viable option. Israel and the US demonstrated that with a sufficiently advanced fusion of intelligence, technology, and coordinated force, they can overcome even the most complex and dense defensive networks. They can impose a catastrophic strategic cost on an adversary without necessarily triggering an all-out state-on-state conflict. This shifts the calculation from how do we defend against a missile barrage to how do we prevent a missile barrage from ever being an option. The strategic initiative has been reclaimed. The new balance of power is tense, complex, and still dangerous, but it is one where the ring of fire has been isolated and the core threat has been exposed. The ripples from Tehran spread far beyond the Middle East. Operation Roaring Lion had profound implications for global geopolitics and the international arms market. For Russia, the performance of its advanced S-300 system in the face of a sophisticated joint US-Israeli attack was a profound and public defeat. The system that was marketed as being able to challenge even the most advanced Western aircraft was paralyzed and defeated. This will have a long-term, cascading effect on the global perception and sales of Russian air defense technology. Major powers from India to Turkey that have invested heavily in Russian defense tech will be re-evaluating their strategic choices. For China, the operation presented a different set of challenges. Beijing has a complex relationship with Tehran, viewing it as a key source of energy and a strategic partner in the region. A weakened and isolated Iran is a direct blow to China's influence. Furthermore, the demonstrated success of a highly complex joint US-allied military operation fusing advanced tech and intelligence will be a critical data point for China's own strategic planning in the Indo-Pacific. The operation was a clear display of the enduring peer-to-peer military power and deep alliances of the United States. Operation Roaring Lion did not resolve the fundamental conflict with Iran. It only deferred it. The question now is, what comes next? A process of rebuilding has already begun. They will look to replace their launchers, to secure their production facilities in even deeper, more hardened underground sites, and to find new ways to bypass the Israeli-US jamming zone. The internal political pressure on the Iranian regime to reassert its strength is immense. This creates a new, perpetual strategic dynamic. For Israel and the US, the next red line is no longer the mere existence of a missile program. It is the point at which that program reaches a critical mass that threatens to once again overwhelm the new deterrent. The intelligence collection will be continuous. The planning will never stop. Operation Roaring Lion was a masterstroke of strategy and execution. But in the end, it was not the final move on the geopolitical chessboard. It was simply the opening of a new and more sophisticated chapter of high-stakes conflict. Operation Roaring Lion was a moment of profound clarity in a region often clouded by complexity. It demonstrated that a preemptive strike, when built on an unprecedented fusion of intelligence, advanced technology, and allied cooperation, can achieve a strategic objective without necessarily triggering a global catastrophe. It did not end the threat, but it fundamentally changed the equation of power. It shattered the myth of invulnerability and isolated a strategic hub, giving the world a potent new tool for strategic management. The lesson of Roaring Lion is a stark and powerful one. The future of conflict is not just in who has the most weapons, but who has the intelligence and the will to use them with maximum paralyzing effect. This is where we need your insight. We've laid out the dispassionate, fact-based military analysis. Now we want to hear from you. Was this truly a sustainable victory? Or does it only set the stage for an even larger, more destructive conflict in the long run? What do you believe the ultimate long-term consequence of Operation Roaring Lion will be? Share your analytical, fact-based perspective in the comments below. We have much more analysis already in development. We're currently diving into the post-strike situation of Iran's proxy forces in Lebanon and Syria. How were they isolated and what is their new operational reality? If you are serious about understanding the true, deeper layers of modern warfare and global strategy, you cannot afford to miss it. Subscribe, click the notification bell, and join our growing community. We'll see you in the next analysis. Thanks for watching.